Imagine a 9-year-old girl standing in the middle of a quiet farm, hugging a calf destined for slaughter. She saves him, names him Ben, and promises she'll come back one day to see him again. Years later, now an adult, she keeps her promise. But what she finds is no longer a helpless calf. It's a massive bull, nearly a ton in weight, surrounded, wary, and known as impossible to tame. Then, something happens. The bull stops, looks straight into her eyes, and what he does next, something no one would believe without seeing, brings her to tears. Because sometimes, an animal's memory is more loyal than a human's heart. Sarah Mitchell was 9 years old the first time she saved a life. It was summer in Wyoming, 2005, and her family was visiting her uncle's cattle ranch outside Sheridan. Sarah had spent the week doing what farm kids do, chasing chickens, climbing hay bales, getting dirty and sunburned and happy. On the last day of their visit, she wandered into the calving barn and found him. He was tiny, maybe 3 days old, lying alone in a corner stall. His black and white coat was matted, his ribs visible even under his baby fat. He wasn't nursing, wasn't standing, just lying there with his eyes half closed. Sarah knelt beside him, her small hand touching his side. "What's wrong with you?" Her uncle appeared in the doorway, saw her with the calf, and sighed. "Rejected. Mother won't let him nurse. Happens sometimes, cows know when something's off." "Off?" "He looks fine to me." "He's weak, Sarah. Too small, born sickly. Even if we bottle feed him, he probably won't make it." Her uncle's voice was matter-of-fact, the tone of someone who'd seen this play out 100 times. "Got the trailer coming tomorrow to take him with the others." 9-year-old Sarah knew what the trailer meant. Every farm kid did. "No," she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "He's going to be okay, I'll feed him." Her uncle smiled sadly. "Sweetheart, you're going home tomorrow. You can't." "Then I'll feed him today, and you'll feed him tomorrow, and the day after." Sarah looked up at her uncle with tears in her eyes. "Please, give him a chance." Something in her face made her uncle hesitate. Maybe it was her determination. Maybe it was the way she was already cradling the calf's head in her lap, protective and fierce despite being barely 60 pounds herself. "All right," he said finally. "We'll try bottle feeding. But Sarah, you need to understand. Even if he survives, he's not a pet. This is a cattle ranch. These animals have a purpose. His purpose is to live," Sarah said simply. For the next 24 hours, Sarah barely left the calf's side. Her uncle showed her how to mix the formula, how to hold the bottle so the calf could latch properly. The first few attempts were disasters. The calf was too weak to suck, the milk dribbling down his chin. But Sarah was patient. She tried again and again, talking to him constantly. "Come on, buddy, you can do this. Just a little bit. There you go. Good boy." On the third try, he latched and drank. Not much, just a few ounces, but it was something. Sarah named him Ben, after her grandfather who had died the year before. Her grandfather had been tough but kind, stubborn as hell, and refused to give up on anything. Just like this calf. By evening, Ben was standing. Wobbly, unsteady, but standing. By the next morning, he was walking. Not well, but walking. Sarah's mother found her in the barn at dawn, asleep in the straw with Ben curled against her side. "Time to go home, honey," her mother said gently. Sarah's eyes flew open. "But Ben?" "Your uncle will take care of him. You gave him a fighting chance, that's all you can do." Sarah sat up, her heart breaking. Ben was awake now, too, looking at her with those dark, trusting eyes. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her face into his soft coat. "I have to go," she whispered. "But I'll come back someday, okay? I promise. I'll come back and see how big and strong you got." Ben made a small sound, not quite a moo, more like a questioning hum. "I promise," Sarah said again. Her uncle walked her to the car, his hand on her shoulder. "You did good, kid. Real good. He's eating now, getting stronger. He's got a chance. You won't send him away, even if he doesn't grow big?" Her uncle was quiet for a moment. "I'll keep him. As long as he's healthy, he stays. Sarah nodded, trying to be brave. As the car pulled away, she turned in her seat, watching the barn disappear behind the hills. She didn't know it would be 20 years before she kept her promise. Life happened the way it does. Sarah's family moved from Wyoming to Colorado when she was 11, her father's job transfer. She visited her uncle's ranch once more when she was 13 and saw Ben then. He was growing, healthy, no longer the weak rejected calf, but a sturdy young bull showing real promise. But then her uncle sold the ranch, retired to Arizona, he said. The new owners took over and Sarah lost track of where Ben had gone. She asked her uncle, but he didn't know. The cattle had been sold off as part of the property deal. Sarah carried the guilt of that broken promise through high school, through college, through veterinary school. She became a large animal vet, specializing in cattle, partly because of Ben. Every calf she saved, every cow she treated, was a way of honoring that 9-year-old girl's promise. By 29, Dr. Sarah Mitchell had built a solid reputation in rural Colorado. She was good at her work, patient with animals, straight-talking with ranchers. She'd learned to separate emotion from practicality, a necessary skill when dealing with livestock. But she never forgot Ben. Then, on a cold March morning, she got a call that changed everything. "Dr. Mitchell, this is Tom Brennan. I run a ranch outside Gillette, Wyoming. Got a situation with a bull. Nobody can handle him, and I heard you're good with difficult animals." "What's the issue?" "He's aggressive, won't let anyone near him. I bought him at auction 6 months ago, figured he'd settle in, but he's only gotten worse. Charges anyone who enters his pen. I'm about ready to send him to slaughter, but thought I'd try one more thing." Sarah grabbed her notepad. "Age? Breed?" "Hereford mix, I think. Records say he's 20 years old, which is ancient for a bull, but he's still got size and strength. Previous owner said he'd been passed around to 3 different ranches in the last 5 years. Nobody can manage him. 20 years old, Wyoming, Hereford mix." Sarah's hand stilled on the notepad. "What's his name?" Let me check the paperwork. Says here, Ben." The room tilted. Sarah gripped the desk, her heart hammering. "Dr. Mitchell? You there?" "I'll be there tomorrow," Sarah said, her voice unsteady. "Text me the address." That night, Sarah barely slept. It couldn't be him. 20 years, multiple ranches, the odds were impossible. Wyoming had thousands of cattle ranches, hundreds of bulls named Ben. But what if? She left at dawn, driving 5 hours north into Wyoming, through landscape that grew increasingly familiar. Past Cheyenne, past Wheatland, into the rolling hills and vast spaces of her childhood summers. Tom Brennan's ranch was modest, a few hundred acres, decent buildings, well-maintained fences. He met her in the driveway, a weathered man in his 60s with kind eyes and cautious movements. "Dr. Mitchell, appreciate you coming all this way." "Where is he?" Tom led her to a reinforced pen behind the main barn. "I keep him separated. Too dangerous with the other cattle. Well, you'll see." Sarah approached the fence and stopped. In the center of the pen stood a massive bull. Easily 1,800 pounds, his Hereford coloring. White face, reddish-brown body, still striking despite his age. His horns were thick, scarred from years of fighting or testing fences. His coat was rough, his eyes wary. He was surrounded by ranch hands keeping their distance, radiating an aura of "don't come closer." But Sarah wasn't looking at his size or his scars or his aggressive stance. She was looking at a small white patch on his left shoulder, shaped almost like a star. She'd traced that patch with her 9-year-old fingers, memorizing it, promising to remember. "Ben," she whispered. "So tell me, have you ever made a promise you never forgot? Share it in the comments. I'd really love to hear your story. And before you go, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of the inspiring stories coming next. And don't forget to hit that like button. It's simple for you, but it makes all the difference in helping more people discover this story." Tom Brennan was still talking, explaining Ben's behavioral issues, the charging incidents, the near injuries to his ranch hands. Sarah heard none of it. Her entire focus was on the bull standing 50 feet away. 20 years. He'd survived 20 years. an extraordinary lifespan for a bull. Most were sent to slaughter by 5 or 6. But Ben had endured, been passed from ranch to ranch, labeled difficult, dangerous, impossible. "Dr. Mitchell," Tom's voice broke through. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I know this bull," Sarah said quietly. "I saved him when he was 3 days old. Bottle-fed him when his mother rejected him. That was 20 years ago, on my uncle's ranch outside Sheridan." Tom's eyebrows shot up. "You're kidding." The white patch on his left shoulder, shaped like a star. I'd know it anywhere. Sarah gripped the fence rail. "What happened to him? How did he end up here?" Tom pulled out his phone, scrolling through the auction records. "Let's see. Purchased from Miller Ranch in Casper, who bought him from... Looks like he's been through 5 different owners in the last decade. Each one sold him off because of aggression issues." "He wasn't aggressive," Sarah said. "Not when he was young. He was gentle, trusting. 20 years of being moved around, treated like a problem to solve instead of an animal with feelings. That'll change anyone." Tom looked at the bull with new understanding. "You really think he'd remember you? After all this time?" Sarah didn't know. The veterinarian in her understood that cattle had good memories, could recognize individuals years later, but 20 years was pushing the limits of what anyone had documented. "Only one way to find out," she said. Tom grabbed her arm. "Doctor, Mitchell, Sarah, you can't go in there. He charged my best handler yesterday, sent him over the fence. The man's got a broken rib. He won't hurt me. You don't know that." Sarah met his eyes. "You're right, I don't. But I made him a promise when I was 9 years old. I told him I'd come back, and I'm 20 years late." Before Tom could stop her, Sarah climbed the fence. The ranch hands immediately started shouting warnings. Tom yelled for her to get back, but Sarah dropped into the pen, her boots hitting the dirt with a soft thud. Ben's head swung toward her immediately, his entire body tensed, muscles coiling. He pawed the ground, a warning sign any rancher would recognize. His eyes were hard, distrustful, the eyes of an animal that had learned humans meant pain or abandonment. Sarah stood perfectly still, 20 feet from him, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Hi, Ben," she said softly. "It's been a long time." The bull snorted, tossing his head, a clear threat. Sarah didn't move. "I'm sorry I didn't come back sooner. I'm sorry you've had a hard life, but I'm here now, like I promised." She did something then that made Tom Brennan's blood run cold. She sat down in the dirt, making herself small, vulnerable, non-threatening. "Remember when you were tiny?" Sarah continued, her voice steady despite her fear. "So small I could hold you in my lap? You couldn't even stand up. Your mom wouldn't feed you. Everyone said you wouldn't make it." Ben was still tense, but he'd stopped pawing. His ears were forward, listening. "I fed you with a bottle," Sarah said. "You were so stubborn. Wouldn't latch at first. But we figured it out together, didn't we? And I slept next to you in the barn. You were warm and soft, and you made this little humming sound when you were content." Sarah's voice cracked. "I bet you haven't made that sound in years." She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out something she'd grabbed on impulse before leaving her clinic, a small bottle of molasses-based cattle supplement, the same brand her uncle had mixed into Ben's formula 20 years ago. She opened it, and the sweet smell drifted across the pen. Ben's nostrils flared, his head lowered slightly. "Remember this smell?" Sarah held the bottle out, not moving from her seated position. "This was your first food, your first taste of something good. For a long moment, nothing happened. The ranch hands held their breath. Tom had his phone ready to call 911. Then Ben took a step toward her. Then another. His movements were slow, cautious, like he was fighting against his own instincts. He'd been hurt too many times, moved too many times, to trust easily. But something, memory, scent, the sound of Sarah's voice, pulled him forward. He stopped 5 feet away, towering over her seated form. Up close, he was even more massive than she'd realized. One movement of that huge head could kill her. Sarah didn't move. "It's okay, buddy. It's me. It's Sarah. Remember? I promised I'd come back." Ben lowered his head until his nose was inches from her face. He breathed in deeply, taking in her scent. His eyes, those dark, intelligent eyes, studied her intently. Sarah lifted her hand slowly, palm up, the way she had when she was 9. "It's me," she whispered. And then something extraordinary happened. Ben made a sound, low, rumbling, starting deep in his chest and rising to his throat. Not a moo, not a warning, a hum. The same sound he'd made as a calf when he was content, when he felt safe. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You remember? Oh God, you remember." Ben pressed his massive head against her shoulder, the way he used to press against her side when he was small. The gesture was so gentle, so deliberate, that Sarah wrapped her arms around his neck and sobbed. "I'm sorry," she whispered into his coat. "I'm so sorry it took me so long. I'm so sorry you've been alone." Behind them, Tom Brennan stood at the fence, his mouth open in disbelief. The ranch hands had gone completely silent. One of them was recording on his phone, capturing something none of them would have believed without seeing. An 1,800-pound bull, known for aggression and impossible temperament, standing perfectly still while a woman hugged his neck and cried, humming that low, contented sound, remembering. Sarah stayed in the pen with Ben for over an hour. She talked to him, told him about her life, about becoming a vet, about all the animals she'd helped because of him. Ben stayed close, occasionally nuzzling her shoulder, that hum resonating through his massive body. Finally, Tom called out, "Dr. Mitchell, I hate to interrupt, but what do we do now?" Sarah stood, her hand still on Ben's neck. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I bought him for breeding, but he's too aggressive to manage. I was going to send him to slaughter next week." Tom looked at Ben with new eyes. "But I can't do that now, not after seeing this." Sarah's hand tightened on Ben's coat. "You can't. He's—" "I know, I get it. But I also can't keep a bull I can't handle. And he won't let anyone else near him." Tom spread his hands helplessly. "What's the solution?" Sarah looked at Ben, then at Tom, her mind racing through options. She lived in Colorado, had a veterinary practice, no facilities for a massive bull. But she couldn't walk away from him again. Wouldn't. "Give me a week," she said. "I'll figure something out." That night, Sarah sat in a motel room in Gillette making phone calls. To ranchers she knew, to animal sanctuaries, to anyone who might have space for a 20-year-old bull who trusted exactly one person in the world. Most said no. Too old, too dangerous, too expensive to maintain. At midnight, she called her uncle in Arizona. He was retired, living in a golf community, but when Sarah told him about finding Ben, he went quiet. "I always wondered what happened to that calf," he said finally. "You loved him so much. I felt terrible when I had to sell the ranch and couldn't track where he ended up." "Uncle Jim, I need your help. I need to find a place for him. Somewhere safe, where he can live out his life in peace. What about you?" "What do you mean?" "You're a vet, Sarah. You've got connections, knowledge, resources, and that bull trusts you, only you." Her uncle's voice was gentle. "Maybe the place he needs isn't a sanctuary. Maybe it's with you." Sarah looked out the motel window at the dark Wyoming sky. "I don't have a ranch. I have a clinic and a small house in town." "So change that," her uncle said simply. "You're 29, single, running your own practice. What's stopping you from buying some land? Starting small, building something?" "Money, time, practicality." "Bull," her uncle said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "You're scared. You've built a safe life, kept your emotions locked up like a good vet should. But that bull in Wyoming? He's asking you to be 9 years old again, to be the girl who fought for a rejected calf because it was the right thing to do?" Sarah was crying again. "What if I fail? What if you don't?" Sarah didn't sleep that night. She lay in the motel bed, staring at the ceiling, doing calculations in her head. Her savings account had $43,000, money she'd been setting aside for security, for someday, for nothing in particular. Maybe this was what it was for. At dawn, she drove back to Tom Brennan's ranch. Ben was standing at the fence when she arrived, as if he'd been waiting. When he saw her truck, his head lifted, ears forward. Tom met her in the yard. Couldn't stay away? I want to buy him, Sarah said. Name your price. Tom studied her. You got a place to keep him? Not yet, but I will. That's a hell of a gamble. So was bottle feeding a dying calf when I was 9. Sarah met his eyes. I'm good at gambles when they matter. Tom nodded slowly. I paid $800 at auction. Give me $500. That covers my loss and gets him somewhere he belongs. Sarah wrote the check with shaking hands. She drove back to Colorado that afternoon, her mind spinning. First stop, her business partner at the veterinary clinic. Dr. Marcus Webb had been working with Sarah for 3 years. He was 62, semi-retired, and had mentioned wanting to buy her out. I need to talk to you, Sarah said, walking into his office. The Wyoming trip. How'd it go? I found a bull I saved 20 years ago, and I'm buying him. Sarah explained everything. Marcus listened, then said, You want to start a sanctuary? Maybe. I don't know. But I need land and flexibility. Sarah took a breath. You've been talking about buying the practice. Is that offer still on the table? You're giving up stability for a 20-year-old bull? I'm keeping a promise I made when I was 9, Sarah said. I can't walk away again. Marcus smiled. Let's talk numbers. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah moved faster than she'd ever moved. Marcus bought her share of the clinic for $70,000. Combined with her savings, she had enough. She found property 40 minutes outside Fort Collins, 20 acres with a small house, a barn needing repairs, and decent fencing. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Her friends thought she was insane. You're giving up a successful practice for a bull? I'm changing it, not giving it up, Sarah said, packing boxes. And it's not just a bull, it's keeping my word. It's remembering who I was before I learned to be practical. You were 9. Exactly. That 9-year-old knew something I forgot, that some things matter more than security. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in her new driveway watching Tom Brennan's trailer pull up. She'd spent every moment preparing, reinforcing the barn, setting up corrals, making everything safe. But she had no idea if this would actually work. Tom climbed out. He was calm during transport, didn't fight loading at all. He knows, Sarah said softly. Somehow he knows. They lowered the ramp. Sarah stepped into view and immediately heard it. Ben's hum, low and questioning. Hey, buddy, she called. Welcome home. Ben emerged slowly, his massive bulk filling the opening. He stepped onto Colorado soil, head swinging, taking in the new environment. 20 acres of grassland, mountains in the distance, clean air. His eyes found Sarah. She walked toward him slowly, hand extended. This is ours now, yours and mine. No more moving, no more strangers, just home. Ben closed the distance between them, pressing his huge head against her chest. That hum grew louder, deeper, resonating with contentment. Tom watched, shaking his head in wonder. I've been ranching 40 years, never seen anything like this. Neither have I, Sarah admitted, her arms around Ben's neck. And I'm a vet. After Tom left, Sarah led Ben to the barn. She'd prepared a large stall with fresh straw, water, feed. But Ben didn't go inside immediately. He stood in the doorway, looking back at her. Stay, his posture seemed to say. Don't leave. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah promised. Not this time. She grabbed a blanket from the house and made a bed in the stall next to his. Just like she had 20 years ago when he was a calf. Ben settled into the straw, and Sarah curled up nearby. As darkness fell, Ben made that humming sound, the sound of an animal finally, after 20 years of chaos and movement and loneliness, feeling safe. Sarah fell asleep to that sound, and for the first time in years, she didn't dream about the things she'd lost. She dreamed about what she'd found. The first month was hard. Ben's trust extended exactly as far as Sarah and no further. When the farrier came to trim his hooves, Ben charged the fence. When a delivery driver got too close to the barn, Ben positioned himself between the stranger and Sarah, head lowered, a clear warning. He's protective, Sarah explained to her new neighbor, Dale Patterson, who'd stopped by to introduce himself. 20 years of being moved around made him wary. Dale, a rancher in his 70s, watched Ben from a safe distance. "That's more than wariness, that's trauma. You sure you know what you're doing?" "Not even a little bit," Sarah admitted. "But I'm learning." What surprised her most was how much Ben remembered. Not just her, but specific things from when he was a calf. She'd used to scratch behind his ears in a particular way. He'd lean into her hand now, the same way he had it 3 days old. She'd sung to him while bottle feeding, an old folk song her grandmother had taught her. When she hummed it now, his entire body relaxed. "You're not just a bull to me," Sarah told him one evening, sitting in his pasture while he grazed. "You're proof that promises matter, that love isn't measured in practicality." Ben lifted his head, grass hanging from his mouth, and made that humming sound. Word spread quickly in the rural Colorado community. Dr. Mitchell bought herself a 2,000-pound pet bull, became the local gossip. Some thought it was sweet, most thought it was foolish. Then things started changing. A woman named Patricia Rodriguez called in late September. "Dr. Mitchell, I heard about your bull, the one you saved as a calf. I have a horse. She's 32, blind in one eye, and the vet says she's got maybe a year left. My husband wants to put her down, says it's kinder. But I can't. She's been with me since I was 16. Sarah drove out that afternoon. The horse, a gray mare named Silver, was ancient and frail but still had spirit. Sarah examined her thoroughly. "She's in pain," Sarah said honestly, "but it's manageable with medication. If you want to give her a good final year, I can help with that. My husband says it's too expensive, that I'm being sentimental." Sarah thought about Ben, about the $500 she'd paid for a bull most people would have sent to slaughter. "Sentiment is underrated. Let me work out a payment plan you can afford." Silver came to live at Sarah's property 2 weeks later. Patricia couldn't keep her. The husband had put his foot down. But she visited every Sunday, bringing apples, brushing Silver's coat, crying grateful tears. "You gave her dignity," Patricia said. "A place to just be old without being a burden." More animals followed. A goat with a neurological condition. 2 chickens rescued from a hoarding situation. A donkey so aggressive from abuse that his previous owner was going to shoot him. Sarah hadn't planned to run a sanctuary. It just happened. By November, she had 12 animals on her 20 acres. All elderly, all damaged, all unwanted by everyone except the people who loved them enough to ask for help. Ben watched these newcomers with suspicion at first, but gradually, he became something unexpected. Their protector. When the aggressive donkey tried to bite Sarah, Ben intervened, placing his massive body between them. When coyotes came sniffing around the chicken coop at night, Ben's bellowing sent them running. "You've become the guardian," Sarah told him, scratching behind his ears. "The one who saves instead of being saved." Dale Patterson stopped by one December morning, watching Sarah distribute hay to her growing herd. "You know what you've built here?" he asked. "A money pit?" Sarah said wryly. Her mobile vet business was doing well, but the sanctuary costs were substantial. "No, hope." Dale pointed to Ben, who was sharing his hay with Silver, the elderly mare. "That bull right there. He should be dead. Statistics say calves rejected by their mothers don't survive. Bulls don't live to 20, and they sure as hell don't remember people from 2 decades ago." "But he did." "Exactly. He did. And now you've got a dozen other animals that should be dead, but they're here, living with dignity because someone cared." Dale's voice was gruff with emotion. "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. Near the end, she said something I didn't understand until now." Sarah waited. "She said the world's divided into 2 kinds of people, those who see something suffering and look away because it's easier, and those who can't look away even when it costs them everything." He looked at Sarah. "You're the second kind, just like that 9-year-old girl who saved a dying calf." That Christmas, Sarah organized an open house at the sanctuary. She invited everyone who'd brought animals, everyone who'd donated supplies, everyone who'd helped. 60 people showed up. Patricia Rodriguez brought her family to visit Silver. A young boy brought his grandmother to meet the three-legged goat she'd sponsored. Dale Patterson donated a new barn heater. And Ben, wary, protective Ben, allowed children to pet his shoulder under Sarah's supervision. He stood perfectly still while a 5-year-old girl traced the white star-shaped patch on his coat. "Is he magic?" the little girl asked Sarah. Sarah thought about it, about the impossibility of this moment, a rejected calf surviving, remembering, reuniting with the girl who'd saved him, about how that reunion had transformed her life, brought her back to who she'd been before practicality and fear had made her smaller. "Yeah," Sarah said, her hand on Ben's neck. "I think maybe he is." That night, after everyone left, Sarah sat in the barn with Ben. 20 years had passed since a 9-year-old girl had made a promise. 20 years of education, career building, carefully constructed safety. And it had all led here, to a barn full of animals nobody wanted, a life that made no financial sense, and a bull who'd taught her that some promises are worth keeping even when it takes 2 decades. "Thank you," Sarah whispered to Ben, "for remembering, for waiting, for teaching me that the best version of myself was the one I left behind." Ben hummed, that low, contented sound, and rested his massive head on her shoulder. Outside, snow began to fall on Colorado, covering everything in quiet white. Inside, Sarah Mitchell, veterinarian, sanctuary founder, keeper of promises, finally felt like she'd come home. 3 years passed. The sanctuary grew slowly, sustainably. Sarah capped capacity at 20 animals, enough to provide excellent care without overwhelming resources. She partnered with veterinary schools, offering internships for students interested in geriatric and special needs livestock. The mobile vet practice thrived, and ranchers who'd once thought her foolish now respected her expertise. But Ben remained the heart of everything. At 23, he moved slower. His joints were stiff in the mornings, and Sarah adjusted his diet to manage arthritis. He spent most days in the pasture with Silver, the elderly mare who'd become his unlikely companion. They grazed together, rested in the shade together, 2 ancient souls content in each other's quiet company. On a warm May morning, Sarah found Ben lying down in his favorite spot under the cottonwood tree. Not distressed, just resting. But something in his eyes told her what was coming. She sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "You tired, old man?" Ben's breath was steady but slow. He turned his head to look at her, and in those dark eyes, she saw recognition, peace, and something that looked almost like gratitude. "You've had a good life these last few years, haven't you?" Sarah's voice cracked. "You've been safe, loved, home." Ben made that humming sound, softer now, but still there. Sarah stayed with him all day. She brought him water, fresh hay, molasses treats he barely touched. She told him stories about the sanctuary, about the animals he'd protected, about the children who'd visited and left talking about the magic bull. "You know what you taught me?" Sarah said as the sun began to set. "That keeping promises matters. That love doesn't have an expiration date. That the 9-year-old girl I was had more courage than the adult I became." She wiped tears from her cheeks. "You brought her back to me, Ben. You saved me as much as I saved you." As darkness fell, Sarah called her uncle in Arizona. He was 80 now, but his voice was clear when he answered. "It's Ben, isn't it?" he said immediately. "How did you know?" "Because you wouldn't call at this hour unless it mattered." Her uncle's voice was gentle. "Is he suffering?" "No, just tired. Ready." Sarah looked at Ben's peaceful face. "I don't want to let him go." "I know, sweetheart. But that's the final promise you made him. That he'd have a good life and a gentle end. You've given him both." Sarah stayed on the phone with her uncle for an hour, talking about that summer 20 years ago, about the stubborn little calf who refused to die, about the girl who wouldn't give up on him. "She'd be proud of you," her uncle said. "That 9-year-old girl. She'd be proud of the woman you became." Ben passed peacefully just after midnight, Sarah's hand on his neck, his humming fading to silence like a song ending. She sat with him until dawn, saying goodbye to the promise she'd kept, the friend who'd waited 20 years, the bull who'd changed everything. They buried him under the cottonwood tree, the spot he'd loved most. Dale Patterson and his sons helped dig. Patricia Rodriguez brought flowers. 23 people came to the informal memorial: ranchers, vet students, families who'd brought animals to the sanctuary. A local newspaper ran a story. The bull who remembered, a 20-year promise kept. It went viral, shared thousands of times, comments flooding in from people who'd never met Ben but were moved by his story. But Sarah barely noticed the attention. She was grieving, processing, trying to find her footing in a world without Ben's steady presence. 2 months later, on a July morning, Sarah received a call from a woman in Montana. "Dr. Mitchell, my name is Emma Chen. I'm 9 years old. Well, my mom is calling for me because I can't call by myself, but I wanted to talk to you." Sarah heard fumbling, then a child's voice, nervous and determined. "Dr. Mitchell, I found a calf. She was born too early and her mom won't feed her, and my dad says she won't make it. But I read about you and Ben online, about how you saved him when you were my age. And I thought, maybe you could tell me how to do it, how to save her." Sarah's breath caught. She was 9 years old again, kneeling in a barn, refusing to accept that some lives weren't worth fighting for. "What's the calf's name?" Sarah asked. "I called her Hope. Is that okay?" "It's perfect." Sarah grabbed a notepad. "Okay, Emma, here's what you're going to do. First, you need colostrum or formula." For the next hour, Sarah walked Emma through everything: feeding schedules, warning signs, how to keep the calf warm, how to be patient when she wouldn't latch. She heard the determination in Emma's voice, the same stubborn hope Sarah had felt 2 decades ago. "Will she make it?" Emma asked finally. "I don't know," Sarah said honestly, "but she's got you fighting for her. That's more than most rejected calves get. And Emma, even if she doesn't make it, even if you do everything right and it's not enough, you'll know you tried. You'll know you cared. That matters. Can I call you again to tell you how she's doing?" "Absolutely. Call any time." Over the next weeks, Emma called regularly with updates. Hope was eating. Hope stood up. Hope took her first wobbly steps. The joy in Emma's voice was infectious, pulling Sarah out of her grief, reminding her why any of this mattered. 3 months later, Emma's mother sent a video. A healthy calf, thriving and playful, with a 9-year-old girl hugging her neck, whispering promises about coming back someday. Sarah watched it 3 times, crying and smiling simultaneously. She walked out to the cottonwood tree where Ben was buried. The grass had grown over his grave, and wildflowers bloomed around the simple stone marker. Ben, he remembered. "There's another one," Sarah told him. "Another 9-year-old girl making promises to a calf everyone else gave up on. The circle keeps going." The wind rustled through the cottonwood leaves, and for a moment, Sarah could almost hear it, that low, contented hum. She'd kept her promise to Ben. She'd come back, given him a home, loved him until the end. And in doing so, she'd found her purpose, her calling, her way back to the girl who believed that every life mattered. The sanctuary would continue. More animals would come, would be loved, would live their final years with dignity. More Emmas would call, seeking advice, finding courage. And somewhere, on a Montana ranch, a calf named Hope was learning that promises matter, that love endures, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to give up. Sarah placed her hand on Ben's marker, feeling the sun-warmed stone. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for remembering, for waiting, for teaching me that the best promises are the ones that take a lifetime to keep." The cottonwood tree swayed in the breeze, and Sarah Mitchell, veterinarian, sanctuary founder, keeper of promises, smiled through her tears. The circle was complete, and it was just beginning. The girl who saved the bull as a calf met him years later. What he did next made her cry.